Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Today, we have a showdown, full bracelet sports watches from elite names in watchmaking. It's Patek Philippe versus Breguet versus starts now. All right, let's jump straight into the better known of the two, a watch that was discontinued in 2021 but available contemporary to that Breguet. We have the Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711/1A-014. This was a one-year only model made for the send-off of the 5711 in 2021. So while it was not a limited edition by number, it was limited production by the constraints of the length of the model year. Taking a quick look at the watch, you can see it's a familiar shape. The original Nautilus was created in 1976 by Gerald Genta, so you know the name behind the watch. And from Patek Philippe, a family-owned company, you get warm fuzzies here, but it's the balance of the double wing profile and the rounded polygon of the bezel, crystal, and dial, along with the integration of case, lugs, and bracelet defining this watch. 40 millimeters, if you measure the diagonals, it's more like 42 if you measure the wings. It's only 8.6 millimeters thick. You can see in stainless steel. And the watch, from lug tip to lug tip, if we are going to talk about the lugs alone, it's going to be 44.5 millimeters. But if you include the one end link on either side, which is the rigid-most outcropping, then you find that it is a beefier 48.5 millimeters from side to side across the wrist. We're going to put this watch on my wrist of 16 centimeters circumference and get a sense of how it fits. It fits easily. It fits flat. It's very graceful. It could be a dress watch, even though, make no mistake, it's a sports watch through and through. From over the top, you can see those lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist. You see even better in this down the barrel shot, and with a sloped flank and a thin profile, this watch will fit easily underneath the cuff. In terms of the movement inside, we're going to get close now. I'm going to do my best. We have a movement that was new for 2019 on the Nautilus. This is the final series 5711 caliber, the 26330 SC. So automatic winding, unidirectional action on ceramic bearings, 45-hour power reserve, 6-position adjusted, free-sprung Gyromax balance, anti-magnetic silicon Spiromax hairspring, 4 Hertz beat rate, so that 45-hour power reserve, playing out at 8 beats per second, 30 pivot joules, accurate, guaranteed to no worse than -3 plus 2 seconds per 24 hours. And this movement does include something previously not available on the 5711, which is hacking seconds. So you now have a true stop seconds function and a quick set date. The movement is very nicely finished, and that's quite apparent when you look at things like the solarization on the barrel cover or the locating pegs that help to place the bridges on the base plate, engine turning on the base plate, mirrored anglage, small engine turning on the center of the rotor, circular stripes, linear stripes, satination on the wheels. It is a good-looking movement. All this courtesy of a screw-down crown, 120 meters water resistant. Now, we'll do a quick loom shot of these two side by side because I really think you do need to see both of them to reach a judgment on that front. I'm not going to call a winner just yet, but I want you to have a frame of reference when I do. So you see these two watches loomed up. Now you get a really good look at them in the dark. And they do maintain luminescent intensity pretty well, although I think you already know where I'm going when I award my loom shot. One of these watches is clearly easier to read than the other. So, what advantages does the Nautilus have? Well, let's just go over all of them. First and foremost, this is a watch that is thinner. By far, it's not even close. The watch you see here is 8.6. The Breguet is 11.7 millimeters thick. Also important, real history and heritage, dating back to 1976. This is a company that has always built a Nautilus model. There was never a hiatus. It has been under the stewardship of the same family since the 1930s, and the Nautilus has become one of the most influential of sports watch designs in history. It's one of the best resolved, and frankly, it has changed among the least relative to its peers. We've seen complications, different dials, different case metals, and even straps, but you know when you're looking at a Nautilus, that consistency across time makes it evergreen, like a Porsche 911 or a Mini, Also, designer of note. The man who designed this is not just a famous name in design, but you actually know who is behind this design. You know the name of the people who run the company. That sort of human touch means a lot to me, whereas Breguet and his sons are long dead, and today Breguet is a Swatch Group company. There's really nothing personal about that watch or that name, and you certainly don't know who was responsible for the design of the current Breguet Marine. Also, this is a rare watch, a model made only for 1 year, and then only in limited numbers because only so many Patek watches could be a steel Nautilus. You're unlikely to see another one of these, whereas the Breguet has been in production since 2018, as you see it here, and it is still in production like that today. If you're interested in the status of your watch, this is going to give you that. Now, I don't dig watches for that reason, but I do acknowledge that it's consideration for many, and if you want to wear the power watch between the two options you have here today, this is it. Both have screw-down crowns, both are water-resistant to at least 100 meters, but this is 120, every little bit counts. Also, a less controversial design. I talked about this design being evergreen, but it's also broadly admired and copied, whereas when the current generation Breguet Marine arrived in 2018, a lot of people felt that it was a little bit brutal and the integration of lugs was not totally seamless. So this is a less controversial design on that front. It is a much better integrated combination of bracelet, lug, case, bezel, and flanks. All right, what does it cost to buy one of these? Pre-owned now, $300,000. The gauntlet has been thrown down. Now, let's take a look at the Breguet. So the Breguet that you see off to the side here is actually a product of the 2018 relaunch of the entire model line. The timepiece is made of titanium. So while the Patek is steel, this is titanium, and that does carry some benefits. Most notably, it's a far lighter watch. It's 40 millimeters in diameter, but it's 11.7 millimeters thick, which means it's a little bit thicker in a way that you can see and feel. From lug tip to lug tip, if we're just talking about the lugs of the case, it's 47.6 millimeters across the wrist, but if we add the end links, if we add the rigid outcroppings that are incompressible, then the rigid horizontal distance across the wrist is actually a beefier 55.5, so there are some fit issues if you want to wear this on a really small wrist. Now we're going to pop open the clasp, which you can see right here, uses twin trigger release, and then it has a double fold internal. We'll zoom out a little bit. My wrist, again, 16 centimeters circumference. I can tell you on the wrist this is a lot lighter, and I'm not sure if the extra thickness is completely meaningful to all people, especially given how sloped and domed that bezel is, but it's something I was aware of when I held the watch in the hand more than I feel on the wrist. Now you can see that the lugs are well inboard of the edge of my wrist, and while it does have a theoretically broader end-to-end distance across the wrist, I feel like the fit is defined more by the lug-to-lug than the end link to end link, so consider this to wear more or less like a 48 millimeter lug-to-lug watch. Good looking watch, it will fit underneath the cuff, no problem there. It's a sports watch, but like the Patek, it could double up on dress duty. The bracelet here is fixed to the case using a unique screw system. You can see they have proprietary heads, and then the links are alternately faceted and rounded. You can also see polish and satination. Removable links here are fixed by screws. And then on the reverse side, we have a lovely rotor, which is a beautiful way of remembering that Breguet was once the watchmaker to the French Navy. That's what this horloger de la marine means. And this is a highly stylized ship's wheel from the age of sail. Now the movement here is 777A. This is a Breguet caliber. Of course, La Magne is now in-house movement development for Breguet, so that's where this came from. Automatic winding. It features a 4 hertz beat rate, stop seconds, quick set date, free sprung balance, 55-hour power reserve, 6-position adjustment, pivoting on 26 joules to the 30 of the Patek. You can see here we have some modern structures, a free sprung balance with recessed variable inertia bolts for fine timing adjustment. We have a silicone escapement that reduces the need for lubrication and service frequency. Then we have an anti-magnetic silicone hairspring that further increases anti-magnetic qualities. So this watch is quite tough. Screw down crown here, 100 meters water resistant. Okay. A feature you might not be able to see at a glance is that the dial is cut on a rose lathe, so while the actual amount of guilloche done here is limited, what was done artisanally. We also have a solid gold dial, which is not something you get on the Patek. The Patek has a dial made of brass. This is a dial made of solid gold. You can also see it has an unusual off-centered sunburst that radiates out from an imaginary center point at the midsection of the Breguet logo. So let's talk about the advantages of this watch here. First, a really big one. I showed you the lume shot before, and you probably knew where I was going with this, but this watch is just much more elaborately and extensively lumed by the Patek. I can tell you the comparison. By Patek standards, where you're actually missing an index at 3. Breguet gives you more lume and also fully luminescent individual indices, so you can read individual minutes in the dark. So advantage on that front. Also, a more expensive and artisanal dial. Here the dial's made of solid gold and cut on a rose lathe, whereas this is almost certainly a stamped dial made of brass. Both of them feature white gold hands and indices, but in terms of total dial quality, it's going to be advantage Breguet alongside its luminescence win. Also, value. This is a watch that on full titanium bracelet costs $22,300. Pre-owned is $13,000 to $14,000 with full box and papers. So value winner right here. The rotor. The rotor here is far more attractive than what you find on the Patek Philippe. The finishing on the Breguet rotor is all manual, whereas the finishing on the Patek rotor is machine applied. And on top of that, the Patek rotor is just not as interesting to look at. Also, on a movement front here, we have 55 hours of power reserve to the 45 of the Patek, so more is better. And on those terms, we got a movement advantage here. I would also say that titanium grade 5 is both lighter than steel and hypoallergenic, but it's also harder and more scratch resistant than steel, which gives this sports watch a durability advantage. And finally, I mentioned those screw-fixed removable links. I know Patek has its argument about not wanting to strip out screws and leave them stranded in the bracelet, but that's rarely a problem with people who know what they're doing. I like the fact that I can use jeweler's screwdrivers to size this bracelet right here, whereas over here, I have to worry about pin sleeves. And that can be a challenging prospect, especially if you don't have a block and punch in your home. I would also tout the fact that here, there is only substance and style, no hype, no baggage, and it's not a hugely recognizable watch, which could actually prove to be valuable in some of the sketchier locations around the world. So which of these do I actually want? Great question, because I have to qualify my choice. Price no object, Breguet is built a winner. For 13 to 14 grand, it's almost impossible to beat this when you combine the hand-finished case and bracelet with the handmade gold dial, with the hand-finished movement of a high grade. And this is a wonderful watch, but for $300,000, I mean, you could buy 20 of the other watch. That's crazy. So this is a watch you have to be really determined to own. You have to think of this as an heirloom. You have to think of this as the I word, an investment, something I often encourage people not to think of a watch as, but it certainly applies here. And I have to be honest that if price were not an object, this would be my choice. Not just because I love the color green, I would pick the blue dials as well, but because this watch is thinner, it's more elegant. There's absolutely no compromise in this design. This has an awkwardness between lug and case and bracelet, and the design of dial is as polarizing as the quality is quietly high, whereas here the dial isn't of the same quality, but I find it more attractive and organically beautiful. Again, lugs into case, into bezel, into bracelet. The beauty of Gerald Genta's design has held up. I have no doubt that someday this will be redesigned in a fashion that doesn't look exactly like this, whereas I have a very strong feeling that there will be a model like this in the Patek catalog in 2076 when it turns 100. In terms of the movement, I could deal without the extra 10 hours of power reserve now that it has hacking seconds, with Patek's traditional standard of finish, and the fact that they do make a claim about accuracy, something Breguet does not do. That appeals to me hugely. The extra water resistance definitely helps, and the evidence of superior detailing and nuance in the finishing of the case and the bracelet gives the Patek cost no object the edge in my mind. I think it's more beautiful inside and out, and I think it's more enduring. And for me, that is the winner. But I cannot overlook the value of the Breguet. So you guys let me know. Cost an object, cost no object. Which of these do you prefer? Let me know in the description below. And if you like these watches, reach out to us, Team Mosso at the 1916company.com.